To beat your mates at fantasy football? I've got a little secret for you.
Fantasy Football Hub offers AI team ratings to enhance your team, AI recommended transfers to ensure you make the right decisions, and a new AI assistant chatbot, all designed to help you win your FPL mini league. Upload a screenshot of your FPL team for an instant free AI team rating. And if you sign up and don't win your mini league, we'll even refund your membership. Terms apply. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Green Arrow FPL podcast from Fantasy Football Hub, fresh from the first international break as we look ahead to game week 4 with wildcards being activated everywhere we look. My name is Fergie, and with Rich on holiday this week, I'm joined by not one but two brilliant fantasy managers and content creators, starting with the one and only BigMan Bakar. Bakar, how are you? And what colour was your arrow in game week 3?
Hi, Fergie. Hi, Jian. Hello, and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. Yeah, I've been doing well. It was actually a very nice international break. It came on the back of a big green arrow. I got 84 points last week, which was by far my best week of the season. I had a roughish start in the first 2 weeks, so it was sort of good to go into the international break on the back of a good week. But yeah, I was actually, generally when I wasn't a content creator, I used to hate the international breaks. But ever since I've started creating content, I love the international breaks, and I was sort of hoping that they don't come to an end so quickly and abruptly. But I guess time has passed, and here we are having to discuss our teams ahead of game week 4. I, in particular, have this quite big of a dilemma with my own team. I think it's probably the toughest situation I've been in so far this season. Wow. So I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight to hope it sort of enlightens me with my moves ahead of game week 4.
Have you, are you thinking about any hits at all, Bakar, or are they firmly off the table at the moment?
No, not at all. Not at all, actually. Good. I think my team looks all right, but it's just a matter of Salah in or not. That's the big discussion.
Absolutely. We'll be talking about that a lot this evening for sure. We're also joined by another FPL superstar in Jian Batra. Welcome, Jian. How are you? And what colour was your arrow in game week 3?
I'm very well, thank you. And I hope the rest of you guys are too. Good evening. It was a small red in game week 3. Overall, I think it's been a pretty decent start for myself. Relatively happy with it. Just my starting in general. I thought the midfields let me down quite a bit, especially when you consider the size of Mbeumo and Salah's Hall, and then Eze got a 10-pointer as well. So I thought maybe the Arsenal boys could have done a bit more damage should Rice not have got sent off. But overall, a decent start, so I can't complain too much.
Yeah, you've got you're kind of, I wouldn't say you're anti-template, but you've got a kind of a different looking team there, haven't you, with Havertz, who obviously got off to a flyer, a flyer of the season, and Son as well. You don't see him in many teams, even though they both had reasonable starts to the season. It's good to see a different looking team as well. Rodgers already in place, Con's already in place. Yeah, looking good. 74 points, good stuff. I scored 81. I had a green arrow. Decent week, really happy. Eze 10 for me, and trying to think actually. Isaac 9, Trent 6. I haven't spent a transfer yet. I've been really lucky. Didn't start with Kwanzaa or Nkunku, for example, or have any more injuries. And my big dilemma this week, I've already made 2 transfers. I did it last night. I was getting a bit twitchy. I've been waiting for like 12 days. To do the Salah and Pedro move away from Saka and Isak, which I think is quite a dangerous move, but I did it last night. I never like making earliest transfers, but I'm contemplating using my thirds on whether to keep it. I'm erring on saving it at the moment. But yeah, we'll see where that goes. But really happy with the start. I always start really badly in FPL because I try and maybe be a bit too different or a bit too smart, but I followed the template reasonably. Stuck with some really good players, so I'm really happy. I haven't spent a transfer and already got Rodgers in place as well for this week, so happy with that. So yeah, good stuff. Welcome everyone in the chat. Fantastic to have you with us as usual. Gavin Rand is in, Ross Johnson, Johnny A. Di Thomas says it's Thursday night, it's Green Arrow time. Absolutely. Darnesh is in. Asked, is Salah essential? Should I just wildcard to get him in? This is what Bakar is potentially thinking about as well, maybe. So we'll chat a lot, I'm sure, about Salah. I'm 1974. Says, press the button of opportunity just to survive the international break tedium. I like that. Good stuff. Paul Krashitzer is in FPL Freddy. Batsy by FPL Sparta. FPL Mackham scored 92 points last week. Claire FPL is in as well. Christian Romeo, Mark Williams and Richard Patel and so many more. Thank you all so much for joining us. Just before we kick off with the show, if you want your FPL team rated for free and weekly transfer recommendations driven by artificial intelligence, click the top link in the description below. Go to Fantasy Football Hub to get your team rated instantly and your recommended transfers weekly for your team, helping guide you to victory in those important mini leagues. We'll be showing our current team ratings and transfer recommendations for our teams later in the show. And if you do join as a paying member, we're so confident in our tools and AI that we're offering a staggering Win Your FPL mini league or your money back offering with 50% off. There's never been a better time to join the hub. Firstly, Bakar, can I just ask, we're 3 weeks in at the moment, what have been your takeaways so far? I know we haven't got an awful lot of data to kind of work on yet, but what's been on your mind so far for FPL?
Fergie, not much has changed. Haaland's been great. Salah's been great. We expected that to be the case. Perhaps they've even exceeded expectations, and I guess that's one of the reasons why teams which you see in most mini leagues, the ones at the top are the ones who started with Haaland and Salah. That's one thing. I was fairly against the idea of owning both at the start of the season because I didn't think or find that there were enough enablers that could enable the likes of Haaland and Salah. And I didn't think that the teams with them were sustainable. I think at this point, I am inclined to change my mind. Even though I still think principally over the course of the season, Haaland-only teams or Salah-only teams will probably outscore Haaland plus Salah teams over the course of the season. But I think at this point in time, when you look at the enablers and some of the fixtures that some of the cheaper players have coming up, I think going with the Haaland plus Salah team is the way to go for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So when you look at the enablers, for example, Lewis is someone who's emerged, very cheap defender. João Pedro has emerged 5.7 million. Minte is looking good at 5.5 million. Rogers has emerged at 5 million, right? All these guys, they ensure that you can get a strong enough team with Trent, with Salah, with Haaland. So that is one sort of thinking or thought that has changed in my mind. It's simply because of the emergence of the enablers. But apart from that, I mean, nothing too surprising. The good teams have still been good. The bad teams have still been bad, like we expected to be the case. But now we're sort of coming to this point where Liverpool have a great run of fixtures for the next 2 weeks. Arsenal have a roughish run, but then they again have a great run from game week 6 onwards, where they're playing Leicester at home and Southampton at home in back-to-back weeks in game week 6 and 7. So I think the vast majority of FPL managers will be looking to either load up on Liverpool on a wildcard this week, and if not, then they can maybe, if they have a route to Salah this week, they'll be looking to get Liverpool players in this week with a view of wildcarding to get triple Arsenal in game week 6. So that's basically going to be the macro strategy in the weeks to come.
Yeah, agreed. Jian, what are your takeaways from the season so far?
I think we've learned a lot. I think a lot of things have changed, and we really have learned a lot. So firstly, you look at the footballing landscape within the league. We'll just go away from FPL for a second. And you look at how managers are trying to play and the philosophies behind the systems now. And a lot of it is very positive, attacking orientated, and they're willing to take risk. I think De Zerbi has had a lot of influence on the league and just generally the state of most games becoming quite transition based. I think you see a lot of teams trying to punch the ball through lines, being very proactive, being very aggressive. And as a result of that, I think we've seen certainly decline in clean sheets, but also just defensive performances in general, because the structures aren't really there to allow for that. You think of Brentford in seasons past, right? They became one of the toughest sides to break down. Nowadays, when you watch Brentford, yeah, they're still decent, but they offer you a lot more space. There's a lot more space in those pockets. There's more space in between the lines. And with the attacking quality in the league just going up every year because of the money that's available and the opportunities that are available, well, the attacking talent's going to punish you when you give them that type of space. And for that reason, I think that clean sheets could become really hard to come by. And I think that's something we've certainly seen in the first 3 weeks. I also think in terms of the defense, we're seeing a mass disparity between the top three, Arsenal, Liverpool, and City, and the rest, just in terms of how good those three are compared to them. Even Liverpool, you wouldn't really put them in that bracket last year under Klopp, right? He offered you a lot, especially with his build-up structure. But nowadays, when you have those fullbacks tucked inside, you have a pivot in front of Van Dijk and Konate. They're not getting dragged into channels. So I think they could become another one who just rack up a lot of clean sheets. And then the last thing I would say is that we've certainly had a lot of clarity surrounding expected minutes on certain players. I think Wood and João Pedro in particular, we were a bit iffy about those, but they looked very good. And just some of the other players in general. So I think there's a lot to be taken from that first 3 weeks and just how the rest of the season is going to go and just projecting from there.
Yeah, definitely agree with the point on the lesser teams. Of a few seasons ago, even the teams at the bottom of the league were sort of hard to beat. It doesn't feel like we've had whipping boys for, kind of a decade or so. We've had teams in the past who were pretty awful, but a lot of teams recently, even if they weren't great, were still kind of hard to beat. But, look at Burnley last year, look at maybe Ipswich and Southampton this year. They're not changing their style of play. And maybe it's kind of a mentality thing in terms of, we're not going to get rolled over. You're not determining our strategy and the way we play. But at the moment, it just feels like they're just not good enough. And and looking at Man City and looking at Liverpool and the other teams, how they just, these teams are trying to pass it around the back, but you're playing against the best players in the world at sort of pressing and finishing as well. De Bruyne's goal and many other goals. It's just happening over and over. So I agree.
I think
with
Ipswich are definitely probably a little bit different to Southampton. I thought Southampton against Brentford were super brave, and I don't think particularly intelligently so. And I mean that with the greatest respect, because they don't have the ball playing centre backs. Whereas when I've watched Ipswich, I think McKenna's certainly been open to being a bit more versatile, and I trust them a little bit more. I don't think that Brighton will necessarily destroy them. I expect them to win and win somewhat comfortably, but I do think Ipswich out of the three will pose some threat, and Leicester under Steve Cooper will always have one of the more defensive philosophies.
Yeah, and to Bakar's point as well, we're seeing an absolute host of enablers which are changing the way we play FPL, right? It's normally been you have 1.5 million or 4.5 million midfielder on your bench kind of hidden away, but the host, I've got the hub off the stats here for the first 3 game weeks, total shots on target right at the top. Semenyo 5.6 million had 17 shots ahead of Eze 6.9. Tavernier, 5.5. He's had 12 shots. Muniz 6.1. Madueke, Wood, Gibbs, White, Cunha, Soucek, Visser. All these. This is normally kind of dominated by the premium sort of players, aren't they? So it's really kind of changing the way we're looking at our teams, and really looking forward to chatting Wildcard. Looking at your team, Jian. Actually looking back a little bit, you've already got a couple of cheaper midfielders in play, and you're kind of starting them every week, which is a trend I feel, which I think I'm going to wildcard in game week 6. We'll look at wildcards next. But I think previously I would have been a bit nervous of starting a 5.5 million every single week, or even 2. But the options available to us are just crazy this year, and it's really meaning a massive variety of strategies and the player pool. I mean, you can normally there's probably about 18, 19 players who realistically
they've done a brilliant job with the pricing.
But there's probably 30 players, 35 players even, who could fit in your team. So it's really good reopen, and really enjoying the free transfer stuff. I was very, very skeptical when they announced it, because I thought it would be boring, but actually I don't see one team the same, really, or if they are the same, they're in different positions in terms of having a free transfer or whatever else. So it's really, really exciting, and I'm really enjoying it as well. Looking at the player picks, the sort of teams first. So especially thinking of Wildcard, there's a lot on Wildcard at the moment ahead of game week 3, and looking at the teams in place next 2 weeks. Villa right up the top, probably flat to deceive a touch at the moment, especially Watkins, who's been brought off early, but he is always he's a class player, right? And he's always one match away from 2 goals and 2 assists or something like that. But their fixtures: home to Everton, home to Wolves at the moment, as good as they get. Away to Ipswich, home to United. Fantastic fixtures for Everton. Brighton are also 3 at home in the next 4. Ipswich at home, Forest at home, Chelsea away, Spurs at home. Palace's fixtures look really strong. Chelsea's pretty good, and Liverpool's, and down the bottom, Forest, Newcastle, Wolves, and Spurs at the moment. Bakar, what kind of teams and players are you looking at the moment? Obviously, you mentioned Salah. There's some nuance around that in there. How being able to afford him, who you remove, and things. So, what's your thinking at the moment on your targets for the coming weeks?
So when you look at the fixture ticker, Aston Villa, Brighton, and Liverpool are the three teams that stand out, in my opinion. So for people who are wildcarding, or even generally, I think the Liverpool players should be front and center of your transfer plans. For example, we've already mentioned Salah, but if someone does not have, let's say, Trent or even Robertson, I think Robertson is a good buy as well. I don't mind the idea for Liverpool double up as well. I think these players should be front and center of your plans. Similarly, from Brighton, I think there's enough value. Maybe Verbruggen, Dunk, Minte, João Pedro, all these guys I think are excellent picks. From Aston Villa, you're right, Watkins isn't exactly looking like the option we sort of perceived him to be at the start of the season, because he's not exactly getting the minutes. He's getting subbed around the 60 to 65 minute mark, and then Duran's been playing well as well. So I find it very difficult to sort of justify Watkins going forward if he does not increase his minutes, which might be unlikely because Aston Villa are in the Champions League, so we don't know. And he wasn't actually pictured training either. Yeah. So I'm not really sure what's up with him. We'll probably await a more concrete update in the press conference tomorrow. But yeah, I think Brighton, Liverpool, Aston Villa, these three teams are clearly ahead in terms of the fixture schedule and should be front and center of our shopping market. And on the other hand of the coin, when you look at Arsenal playing Spurs away, City away next week, Rice is suspended, Odegaard isn't around, so I can see why people are using sort of Saka as a make way to get Salah. I don't think he's a hard sell, but of course, if you're buying Salah, then it sort of makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Jian, looking at the landscape for the coming weeks, who are you looking at? Who's exciting you?
So I actually think when you're looking at the coming weeks, the most important thing to do is really to evaluate Arsenal and Liverpool by quite some way compared to the rest. I think a lot of wildcard 4 rests on the fact that teams who are wildcarding don't have Salah at the moment and are looking to get Salah. They're looking to get Trent and Robbo and really attack the upside there. Similarly, the teams that are wildcarding are also looking at taking out Arsenal assets. And therefore, I think it's really important to understand what we're expecting from Arsenal. Just because they have Spurs away and City away doesn't automatically mean that Saka's incapable of, scoring points, or the fact that he's not going to do very well, right? Because in those bigger games, he's certainly what I would say is the master key in that Arsenal side. He's comfortably their best attacker, and a lot runs through him when they need to run through him because he's the best one to break it down and unlock something. So I think he has a lot of avenues to points in that game. And then I think with that in mind, you also need to evaluate, so is it worth it going from Saka to Salah and back to Saka essentially in game week 6? So I would say overall, the landscape hugely depends on how you view Arsenal and Liverpool, because you expect Liverpool to do well in the next two, but how well, and using the difference, I guess, that's how you justify a transfer. So I would say, honestly, the landscape could pretty much be deduced just from those two teams. And then, yeah, like the teams like Aston Villa, they help as the enablers, right? Like your cheap Conces, your cheap Rodgers, having someone like maybe Palmer, if you think the assets are good, Eze and Mbeumo, but they're all relatively, I think, sound and easy picks. But I do think it's the understanding where Arsenal and Liverpool fall within your own projections. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think looking at Arsenal first, I think the Rice and Odegaard likely emission from game week 4 is, and maybe it's confirmation bias. It probably is on my part, because I've been contemplating for the last 2 weeks taking out Saka for Salah. But I do think those two guys missing against Spurs will be a big miss for Arsenal. I think it'll definitely disrupt the way they play. Odegaard, especially as being a kind of ever present, his relationship with Saka, is superb. And looking at the players they might bring in, we were having a look earlier. We were looking at the Hub AI and looking at lineups and things, and there's not masses of options. Like, we potentially even think that Havertz may actually kind of drop into Odegaard's position, and Jesus may get a start, or Sterling and Martinelli, or Trossard may go up front. But I think either way, their flow, their rhythm with Odegaard not there, I think will be different. He's such a good and influential player, so I do think that'll be a miss, and that's helped me definitely make me a bit more comfortable taking out Saka. He is on penalties. He is an elite player, but yeah, I think the thing think that's a good point. And on Liverpool,
One thing,
yeah,
sorry,
no.
I was just going to say one thing I would say about the move, just in general, is most people aren't going to captain Salah in 4, and I just think like, is there the potential to at least wait a week just to see like if it's worth it for just that 1 week? Because
Yeah,
if
that's a good
Saka does
shout.
do well in 4, you're not capturing too much upside, even if Salah was to do better because you're captaining Haaland. Maybe it's like a 4 or 5 point swing. But what if Saka does better and you have a free transfer? So I actually think the upside sort of lies just staying for a week at least.
And yeah, and that's a fair shout. And the template move actually is to take out Isak, who Michael Vernier has reminded us in the chat, scored 3 goals over the international break. Who was involved in the other 3 as well, and they play a Wolves team who conceded 6 a couple of weeks ago to Chelsea. So yeah, definitely, people, if they are making moves this week because they're scared of Salah, of which I am one, definitely. And I did it last year. I a wildcard last year early in game week 24, and I took out Saka, and he had back-to-back braces, and that essentially derailed my whole season. His ownership was a lot higher than I think than it is now, but yeah, it was really, really tough. So Liverpool are interesting because I've got Jota. I still think I'm happy to hold Jota. I still think he gets 70, 75 minutes. I think he's looked dangerous. He's been a beard hair away from a couple of headers and stuff which could have changed his fortunes and made him the go-to player as well. Luis Diaz obviously looks exceptional. I think both of them are going to concede minutes to Gakpo and Nunes, etc. But looking at those back-to-back home fixtures for Salah, and I think for me the thing which is deciding my fate definitely is those fixture swings in game week 6. We'll talk about game week 6 in a bit, the kind of wildcard options, but it's such for me a natural swing that I'm mega comfortable getting in Salah for the next 2, going without Saka and Isak, who both play away, and then wildcarding. But yeah, I can see
Fergie. Yeah. See, Fergie, this is like the main point. So when you compare the wildcard for game week 4 wildcarders with the game week 6 wildcarders, the game week 4 wildcarders are essentially people who have loaded up on Saka, Arsenal defense, who have, let's say, no Brighton in their teams and who have no route to Trent and Salah. These are the people who are looking to wildcard in game week 4. While the ones who are looking to wildcard in game week 6 are people like yourself who have a realistic route to Salah by game week 5, if not by game week 4, and who don't necessarily have, Arsenal defense and who can get João Pedro easily as well. So in that case, it makes sense to sort of wait till game week 6. I agree with Jian when he says that the upside for Salah lies more in game week 5 as opposed to this week, because Haaland is likely to be the optimal captain this week anyway. And Saka is not exactly a hard sell because, he does have a good track record against Spurs, and you'd still expect him to get at least 1 attacking return this weekend. So I agree with him. I think getting him in this week is desirable, but it's not something which is necessary. But I think it sort of becomes borderline necessary in game week 5, because it will be very hard to sort of take on his ownership when Liverpool are playing at home to Bournemouth and Haaland is playing against Arsenal. That's going to be a very tricky week to navigate. Actually, the start of the season, I had sort of earmarked this week as one where, let's say, if Spurs were more in form or if Son had looked great, Son could have been a potential alternative to Salah. But I don't think his performances so far have sort of inspired enough confidence to go there to take on that Salah ownership. So yeah, I think Salah is basically close to essential by game week 5.
Yeah, I think as well, the thing with getting him in early, for me anyway, is that if you have other problems with your team between 4 and 5, you may not have the capacity, the resources, the whatever to actually bring in Salah. It maybe you've got other fires to fight as well, and we're playing an ownership game as well, right? We know every wildcard in this week, which is a lot of the population of FPL are all bringing in Salah as well. So you're fighting against a herd of engaged managers and casual managers and basically everyone, because there's not many times when a player scores, was it 50 odd points or whatever it is in the opening game. So I think that's why I want to get him in place. He might rise again. He may rise again. He may rise again before the deadline this week and next week again. And so I think it's very much depends on where you are, and it's probably easier for me than yourself, Bakar, for example, based on where our teams are. But I want to get him in. I want to get him in personally. I don't want another day
let's
behind the
discuss
sofa.
the wildcard, Fergie.
Yeah, please. Who are you?
Let's touch.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, let's touch on the wildcard picks. So a lot of people are on a game week 4 wildcard, apart from the ones we mentioned. I think what is critical to sort of nailing this wildcard will be picking the optimal 3 from Liverpool, simply because of how good their fixtures are. I guess Salah and Trent are kind of obvious, but I think I would go Robertson over Diaz or Jota, because there's a very good chance that Robertson plays both games. I don't share the same confidence when I'm talking about Luis Diaz or Jota, simply because of the number of attackers that Liverpool have available. And with the short turnarounds, I'm not entirely sure. And even if they do sort of start, their ceiling could potentially be limited due to early substitutions. So I think I would have Trent, I would have Robertson on a wild card. I think from Brighton, you go either Verbruggen or Dunk. I would go with Minte and João Pedro both. I really like the next 2 fixtures. And I think one of the reasons why Minte hasn't really sort of gotten the attention that he should has been because he hasn't exactly hauled yet. And Mitoma seems to be the more popular buy, but I'm not convinced that there's like 1 million worth of difference between their output. In fact, when you look at their career underlying data, in the past 1 year, Minte has a very much higher underlying data, non-pen XGI, as compared to Mitoma. Mitoma's 0.3 in terms of XGI per 90. Minte is sitting close to 0.6. So I think Minte is a good buy as well on wildcard. And I also think another point I'd like to sort of mention from a macro point of view is that because a lot of these teams will be going without Arsenal because of their fixtures, it is very likely that they would want double or triple Arsenal by game week 6. Yeah. My point being that because you will be pre-booking 2 or 3 transfers in advance, it is sort of very important to pick a long-term robust team. So it's important to have, in my opinion, 8 playable attackers who you can rotate. So for example, if something like, let's say if Rodgers loses his spot, something similar to, let's say, Nkunku happens, you're not exactly forced into another transfer or another hit because you've already pre-booked transfer for Arsenal players, right? So that's one thing that is very critical. Make a robust enough, solid team with good squad depth so that it gives you the flexibility to navigate the weeks to come.
Yeah, really good points there, Bakar. Who would your locks be, Jian, if you were wildcarding this week?
So I think it's really interesting. I'm going to start with a little bit of strategy as well, because I think it's so important, like Bakar was speaking about. I do think that potentially wildcarding this week, just as a slight counter argument for those who are considering it, is potentially overexposing yourself to risk. Because like Bakar said, you have booked transfers in for 6, right? And not only are you not going to have the wildcard now for another 13 weeks, especially as the schedule becomes intensified and injuries start to just rise, but also, like I said, you're booking in those transfers. And I do think that it locks you into a little bit of a strategy. And what happens if something happens in the next 2 weeks? All that it takes is really a Brighton underperformance or even one Liverpool underperformance, and I think you're in deep trouble. So I would just consider that if you are going for a wild card, maybe you can just hold Arsenal assets for a while. In terms of the locks, I think Salah 100%. There's no way I'd wild card without having Salah for these next 2 at least. I would still be very bullish on Haaland. I think he's looked unbelievable, and I just think he's going to continue. Maybe not a hat-trick every game, but I expect him to score pretty much every game. And then the other picks, I agree with João Pedro. I like Minter. I would also go in BigMan. Bakar spoke about how you would like a robust side, and I think Mbeumo is someone you can hold for ages, right? So yeah, sure, you bench him away to City. If you have to play him, it's not the end of the world, but at least you get him for Spurs away, and then the great run from 6. I also like potentially having Rico Lewis, something I spoke about earlier, the lack of clean sheets. I think if he is to play in this role where he gets into these right side pockets up the pitch quite a lot, he's always got a good avenue to returns. And then similar to that, I'd also go for someone like Porro as well. You can hold him for a while. He's always got a good floor because of the position he's playing, the role he has in his team. So I'd say those are the type of guys that I like.
How he didn't score against Newcastle.
I agree with Jian. I think I played him that week. You don't need reminding me. I played him that week. It was agonizing watching him that week. He actually had 6 shots, and I agree with Jian. I think Mbeumo and Porro would be locks. Mbeumo would save you the hassle of bringing him in by game week 6 because, I mean, I think we've sort of spoken at length in general at how good he is without Ivan Toney being the talisman on penalties, etc. And the fixtures for Brentford are really good from game week 6. So yeah, he can be a good set and forget option. Porro as well. Porro is top for shots so far among defenders. And I just think he's a good long-term hold. I would probably have another 4.5 million defender to sort of rotate with Porro because I still don't want to play him in some of the tougher fixtures. For example, this week, or let's say in the weeks to come, there are 1 or 2 tough fixtures for Spurs, which I'd feel sort of uncomfortable playing Porro in. He rotates well with someone like a Konza, for example, if he's fit, that is. One player I think I would add to the list, though, is Eze. I think I would definitely have Eze as well, because the fixtures for Crystal Palace are really good. They're solid enough. And again, very much like Mbomo, he's a set and forget option. And he's cheap enough as well. I'm almost certain that I'd pick him on Wildcard if I was wildcarding this week.
Yeah, he was going to be the one I was going to chuck in there, Bakar. You stole my thunder there, but yeah, Eze for me is probably in the top 3 for me of lot. I wouldn't go without him from what he's done already. How unlucky he's been, the fixtures he's got moving forward. We've already seen with him and with Gordon and with others as well. If a midfielder scores a goal in a low-scoring game, they basically locked in kind of 9 or 10 points. So yeah, I completely agree with that. Isak's an interesting one. Don't really think he's done much wrong yet. I think his price point is probably a bit awkward because it's hard to get to everyone else. But
yeah, he's high.
He's high, but he's predicted to score a lot of points over the next few weeks. As he was, I was chatting with Rich last week, and he was confused as to why Isak was ahead of Watkins, in predicted points. But just because Newcastle are not playing at home, they still got really, really good fixtures, and he looks really good still. So he's one I wouldn't chuck him in as kind of an essential player, but he is that awkward price, especially when you've got João Pedro, and kind of others as well. I'm sure V7 come Gameweek 6, for example, is going to be popular as well. But yeah, some interesting stuff there. So just looking there at a wild card Gameweek 3 team there, roughly for Bruggen, you mentioned potential Liverpool double up with Porro, maybe Lewis as well in there as well. Eze, Salah, Luis Diaz, I'm assuming would be the pick. Oh, you couldn't have Diaz mind with Robbo and Trent. Who else would be there? Haaland, João Pedro,
Minter and Buemo.
Minter and
Rogers. Yeah, I think Rogers is the enabler.
Yeah, Villa's fixtures are sick, aren't they? Yeah.
One thing I would say about Isak, though, is I actually don't think Newcastle have been as bad as people have made out. I think a lot of their, issues from an FPL standpoint have been more so that final pass or the finishing. And I do think that with Tonali back in the side, he helps in pretty much all phases. And I do think they'll become a bit more of a more competent unit just overall as they start to find their stride, especially given they don't have any European commitments. So I wouldn't be surprised if Isak starts to light the league on fire. The other thing is, sure, he's significantly more expensive, but you're also paying for a higher quality of player. So chances that maybe you wouldn't expect like a Chris Wood to put away, you are expecting Isak to do a little bit better or manufacture something. So I think that's definitely something to take into account with Isak, price aside.
And as well, they had the red card, didn't they, in Gameweek 1, which massively impacted that match.
They weren't even that bad against Bournemouth. He should have scored.
Yeah. I'm actually sort of low-key excited about the potential of owning Isak as a bit of a differential. A lot of people are selling him this week. He's a bit of a differential at this point because everyone owned him by last week, but now, obviously, because people have other moves to make, Isak's being sort of used as a make weight. So yeah, it's due to no fault of his own, I would say.
Just a word on Chris Wood, who we mentioned there as well. Again, we were having a look earlier at his numbers. He's chucking up Haaland and Darwin Núñez XG numbers. It's absolutely insane. We're going to show the Hub AI Gameweek 4 wildcard team now, and unsurprisingly, he is in there. But the team is Verbruggen and Fabianski, Robertson, Trent, and Gvardiol is still kind of living off his past glories from his marauding runs last year. He makes it with Howard Bellis and Greaves, so it's just still throwing a lot of money in defence there. A midfield 5 of Salah, Eze, Saka, Palmer, and Winks, and then it's still avoiding Haaland, which it's really funny because 7 goals in 3 games. Any other season, right? If you didn't have Haaland, you'd be like 7 million now, right? But so many teams haven't had Haaland, and they're still doing really well. But it's got a front three. We've talking about these. Isak, his data, his numbers, his predictions are still really good. João Pedro and Chris Wood as a front three. So no Haaland, obviously the big omission in the Javier Wildcard team, but it is rock solid. I think I'd probably risk Rico Lewis over Gvardiol, maybe go for Porro and upgrade a 4 million or something like that. But I don't think it's far off there. And you've got the capacity to bring in Mbeumo in 6 as well, Semenyo potentially as well. But yeah, it's looking good. Any critique on that team at all?
I would actually say, because it's just something I was thinking about an hour before I came on, I'm starting to like Gvardiol more and more. I think with the injury to Nathan Ake and the fact that Pep mentioned that Rico Lewis can't play every game, right, because they have so many games and he's only 19, I do think Gvardiol's minutes will be great, and I really like the run from 7. And in combination with that, I don't actually think going forward he's been as bad as people have said. Sure, it's been a huge regression in terms of the likelihood of him getting attacking returns from last year, but it's still at a baseline level okay. And I do think that he'll get 1 or 2. He should have had a 1 against Ipswich, and I think a couple have just gone under the radar. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially when De Bruyne gets rotated and he brings Foden back in, if some of the responsibility gets shifted. And from 7, he becomes more of an option than he is now. So a good long-term hold.
Yeah, agree with that. Bakar, anything to add that at all, or anything more on Game Week 4 wildcard or picks for the coming weeks?
I think looking at that team, most of the picks are similar to the ones we've already discussed. It's basically the fact that it has a different structure, because it has Saka and Palmer as opposed to Haaland, like we did instead of Isak. And I still think having Haaland is better to cover the captaincy, and because it gives a better bench overall. I think having Haaland is better than having Saka, Palmer plus Isak is what I'm trying to say, because the extra cash sort of enables you to spend more on the bench.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to look at next Game Week 6 fixtures, and this is where from Game Week 7 onwards especially, having no Haaland could be pretty frightening. So just a quick look at Game Week 6, which is going to be a very, very popular time, and we can see where it definitely naturally falls nicely for my team. But Brentford's top from Game Week 6 till 9. They go home to West Ham, home to Wolves, away to United, home to Ipswich. You can imagine, and Mbeumo definitely, being on penalties, the main man there. I quite like the look of Visser for that run there. I think Visser is 6 million,
6.1,
6.1. He's gone up. Yeah, you're right. And Arsenal, as we've all talked about, home to Leicester, home to Southampton. I mean, Saka, Havertz, and a defender, I'm assuming, but there's lots of away to Bournemouth, home to Liverpool. Everton have decent fixtures. If we do see a turnaround from them, they're not looking great at the moment, but we know they can be mean at the back. Dwight McNeil has been going under the radar a touch. He's been looking pretty good. McNeil, he could be a fairly decent enabler come that time. Villa's fixtures are still strong there, so Rodgers he could be, if he keeps on playing, he could be an absolute gift. And Man City away to Newcastle in Game Week 6, which that'll be a toughish game, but home to Fulham in 7, away to Wolves in 8, home to Southampton in 9. It will take a brave player not to have Haaland for those 3. When Liverpool in that same period are right down the bottom of the ticker. They are away to Wolves in 6, which is decent, but then they got Palace, Chelsea and Arsenal. They're 3 away from home out of the 4 as well. So lots and lots of options there. Bournemouth as well. I've got pretty decent figures in 6, home to Southampton, away to Leicester as well in 7. So yeah, some massive options there. Bakar, have you kind of plotted a wild card path yet, or are you still open? Or
I think if I get Salah in Game Week 5, which I inevitably will, Game Week 6 wildcard looks likely for me.
Okay.
It's not locked in, but I think it makes sense for my team, and I think I would likely do it than not. I'd say it's probable, but it's not locked in. Simply because, when you look at Brentford, I'd want Mbeumo. I don't have Mbeumo. I'd probably want Flecken. I don't have Flecken. I won't have any Arsenal at that. I won't have any Arsenal at that point. I won't have any Everton. I may want a City defender. So these kind of things. I'm pretty sure there will be enough upgrades to probably justify wildcarding in 6. It's just whether I think that if 6 is a better window than game week 8, but it depends on how my team is looking. But I think as of now, I'm leaning more towards the game week 6 wildcard.
And game week 8 as well is going to be off. It's going to be during the break, the next international break as well. I think, in it. So
yes.
get a lot more information.
Yeah, that's
there,
right.
as well. Interesting. Jian, what's your thoughts on wildcard at the moment?
Yeah, so I think it's a good thing for the podcast. I'm completely on a different strategy.
Fantastic.
I have no interest in wildcarding in 6. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm definitely not getting Salah this week, but I also think I'll fade him in 5. For me, given that I've already got triple Arsenal there, I don't think it's worth using multiple transfers and a wildcard just to essentially facilitate Salah for such a short period of time. I'm comfortable giving the captaincy to Haaland in game week 5 simply because I don't think Arsenal have been as good defensively, and I think he's looked sharper. And it's also like Salah doesn't necessarily haul, right? I think the Bournemouth fixture is great for him, and I only have good things to say, but it's still not a guaranteed haul, and I'm not willing to put myself or expose myself to that type of risk for a wildcard. So for me, I'm looking at bringing in Mbeumo in 6, maybe Eze this week, and Porro in game week 5. So I'll have a lot of the wildcard 6 structure anyway, given I've got triple Arsenal, and then the look to play it in 12 or down the line. 12's got a big fixture swing,
brilliant.
which I like to target. Yeah. And I think just having it for the busy period could be quite a nice differential, but also it suits my team.
Have the free transfers being rolled after a wildcard, is that making an impact on your decisions as well, or?
I think I would like it to have an impact on my decisions, but I haven't been able to roll any. Yeah, I had Quansah in game week 1. Yeah. He had to go. In Nkunku game week 2, he had to go. I have to it just makes sense for me to make a transfer in some capacity this week, whether it's at the back or to sell Son. So yeah, I don't really know when I'll get to roll. So for me, I don't think it's going to be much of a thing. Maybe in 7, but I doubt it because I quite like the look of Bowen.
Oh really? Oh, interesting. Okay, let's have a look at West Ham's. Yeah, home to Ipswich in 7 is a nice fixture. And then Spurs Man United again. Sometimes the fixture ticker can be a bit misleading in terms of defensive frailties for top teams, can't it? United and Spurs at the moment still look kind of wide open, don't they? So it'll be interesting to see if that changes. Interesting stuff. All 3 of us potentially then on a maybe different route. I'm absolutely locked into game week 6. So all the transfers and decisions I'm making now is dead ending, into 5. Bakar, you're still a bit open potentially there. And yeah, you're definitely not Jian. So and this is what I mean about the state of the game is fantastic. I think maybe last year, maybe in itself, Jian, because you tend to play a bit differently or contrary, to the popular sort of strategies, which is why you do so well and why we love having you on as well. But yeah, definitely, really, really interesting stuff there. Let's just have a look. Let's go back then and just roll into game week 4 and just look at some stats in terms of teams to target, in terms of transfers, but also captaincy as well. We may have a bit of just gonna sort Jian out a second. See if I can remove Jian and then add him in. Oh, hang on. Jian will be rejoining now any second, hopefully. His camera's frozen. There he is. He's back. He's back. Fantastic.
I'm back. Sorry.
No.
Just kick me out.
All good.
No worries.
Yeah. We're just going to look at some game week 4 stats, courtesy of the hub as well. In terms of transfer decisions and in terms of captaincy as well. So, Man City at home to Brentford are top in terms of goals. So expected 2.51 goals. Second are Liverpool, 2.35. So Man City just ahead of Liverpool. Chelsea, interestingly, are actually third away to Bournemouth, expected 2.15. And clean sheets, Liverpool have the best odds for clean sheets, 53. So we mentioned earlier, Bakar, about the double up potential for Liverpool, looking really good for the coming weeks. Man City, 52% chance for clean sheet. And Brighton, 49%, who've looked a bit more resilient this year. Just in terms of this week then, and in terms of decisions and captaincy in particular, Haaland, Salah, you've both, I think, mentioned that Haaland is looking to be your favourite for captaincy. Is that true, Bakar? Are you definitely on Haaland, or you tempted? If you bring in Salah, Would you be tempted to go for him?
I don't think there's a chance I'd do that. I think Haaland is pretty clear for me in his form, given the home fixture. I generally very rarely sort of tend to go against him when it's a fixture against a non-top 6 team in a single game week. So yeah, I guess I'll stick with Haaland as things stand.
Jian, are you on Haaland, or the way you play?
Yeah,
you go different. You go definitely Haaland.
I'm going Haaland. I've got tunnel vision on him at the moment. I honestly think he could destroy pretty much any team in the league at the moment. So yeah, I'm not going to be moving off him. I think I might just captain him every single week and not stop. That's my strategy at the moment, genuinely.
It's going to be a really interesting game watching Man City and Brentford, because Brentford, their press is so good in it, and so strong. But you know, if any team can break their lines and break through that press and create opportunities, it's going to be Man City. So it's going to be a fantastic watch. It'd be interesting to see if Thomas Frank actually changes his approach. I know historically there's been some really good matches, haven't there, with City and Brentford.
He has two different structures. So he has a big game structure where he goes to 3 at the back. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please do.
Yeah, so he has a different big game structure. So he employed it at Anfield. He's employed it in the past. So I imagine he drops Kevin Schade, and then they play with wing backs. Maybe Lewis Potter, who's a good carrier on the left. So that's what I think he'll do. Just crowd the centre and try and neutralise Haaland like that. Interesting stuff.
Looking at predicted points for this week for captaincy, Haaland comes out top 8.7. Salah not far behind, though, 8.3. Eze is third, 7.2. Saka 6.6. De Bruyne 6.3. Isak 6.2. I'm taking out 2 of the top 6 this week, which just doesn't feel right. And in terms of the poll on fantasyfootballhub.co.uk, Haaland is top. 59% of the vote. Salah second, 35. So probably, you know, all that data very much kind of lends itself to Haaland will be really popular, really high EO, probably sort of like 180, 190%, I guess. So yeah, interesting there. Salah second. Just before Fergie's a punt, I picked out Semenyo last week, which I was pretty pleased with that, because everyone's talking about him now, but not many people were talking about him before last week. Obviously got the goal, which got Bournemouth back in the game against Everton. I think I haven't plotted out a wildcard for 6 yet, but you know, he's home to Southampton in game week 6. Think he'll be there or thereabouts. I think, you know, given his price, along with you know, Mbeumo or wherever else. But this week we kind of spoiled him a touch. I didn't think that we would talk about him very much. Bakar has spoken about him quite a bit, actually. The AI absolutely loves him. He's been in the AI team all season. It's recommended him still. I think, looking at some of our stats, he's being recommended to 66% of managers via our recommended transfers AI tool as well. He's top for predicted points for defenders for the next 4 game weeks. He's had a couple of shots on target. Looks very dangerous, playing for the best defence in the league at the moment. 3 clean sheets out of 3. And he's still only 6.8% owned, which I found pretty staggering. But Andy Robertson is very, very low owned. And he is fancied by the AI, and he looks very good as well. And even if you have Trent, a double Liverpool defence with Robertson only at 6.8 looks a huge differential. So I really fancied Robertson to, you know, do really good things over the next couple of weeks, and he's been really close. That header off Jota's sort of overhead kick assist.
Yeah,
if he'd have scored that, I think he'd be a lot, you know, kind of a lot more teams actually. So
it's a good point.
And Fergie, I think he's not just going to be popular for game week for wildcarders. I think for, let's say, people with Gabriel or Saliba who are looking to wildcard in game week 6, and they don't have adequate bench cover to bench any Arsenal defender in game week 4 and 5, selling Gabriel to or Saliba to Robertson for 2 weeks is a good strategy. I think it's a very good transfer. I think you're going to gain in terms of points if you make that transfer.
Definitely agree on you know, on some corners and things as well. You know, he's not just there. He's the complete sort of attacking fullback, chucking up all sorts of numbers, because he haven't had the return yet, I think, is the only reason why his ownership hasn't shot up. But I don't think he's risen in price, haven't he? He's still like 6 million, which
yeah, it's still six. It's still 6.
A crazy price. So yeah. competition time for our YouTube viewers. And this week, our weekly prize had a big upgrade with a chance to win some sensational award-winning curry pies, courtesy of Muckagee's Asian Pie and Catering Company. We did have a winner last week. Both Salah and Haaland scored 17 points each. And Tim Harrison, who was live in the chat at the time, has won. So, Tim, if you can send me a DM at FFH_Fergie on Twitter or X. You have won yourself a box of these pies, which are absolutely incredible. And for a chance to win yourself this week, simply like the stream, so press the like button and comment on who's going to be the top scoring FPL player for Game Week 4. And if you're right, you'll win a box of these incredible pies of the choice, including their famous Mother Clucker, Creme de la Hen, the Bulldozer, and so much more. They look and taste incredible. If you want some for yourself, just click the link in the description below and you can get 10% off your first order. Watching the football with a Muckagee's curry pie is a match made in heaven. So don't forget to like the stream and comment. It will be the top point scorer in FPL this coming week for a chance to win a box for yourself for absolutely free. This competition is restricted to the UK for shipping purposes. Jian, you can't go for Salah or Haaland. Who do you think is going to be the top point scorer in Game Week 4?
I'll go Isak. I actually fancy the fixture,
don't...
and I think a nice little bit of revenge. Nice little bit of revenge.
It will be a bit
All
of
the haters like you.
I love that. Bakar, who do you think will be the top point scorer in Game Week 4?
Yeah, I'd go with Eze.
I
think the fixture's there. I think it's a great pick.
Same. I was gonna go with Eze, so I'm gonna go for. I'll just be boring and go for. I tell you what, I'll go for my punt, Andy Robertson. I reckon this is the week for the 15-pointer for Andy Robertson.
Oh, wow.
So I will go for him. Just a reminder before we show our teams, if you want your FPL team rated for free and want weekly transfer recommendations driven by AI, click the top link in the description below. Go to Fantasy Football Hub to get your team rated instantly and recommended transfers weekly for your team, helping guide you to victory in those important mini leagues. If you do join as a paying member, we're so confident in our tools and AI. We're offering a staggering Win Your FPL mini league or your money back offer with 50% off. There's never been a better time to join us at the Hub. If you do want to chat FPL as well, we also have a Discord server. The link is in the description. Come in and chat everything Fantasy Football now. It's absolutely free. Let's have a look at our teams ahead of the weekend. Bakar, we've got your team up first. 1.5 million in the bank. How many free transfers have you got?
Yeah, so I have 2 free transfers heading into this week. And I'm sort of stuck in a bit of a tricky, sticky situation because let's say if I had 1 free transfer, then I would have been all right not having Salah this week. Or let's say if I had to, take a hit to afford him, then it would have been, an easy decision. Or if I was on a wildcard, I would have definitely got him in. But I think I'm in that uncomfortable position with 2 free transfers where I can possibly get to him, but there's no obvious transfer that I can pick that can fund the extra 1 million that I need to upgrade Saka to Salah. So first, my first option is to save. Now, this is probably a passive option. My team looks all right on paper. It's not as if I absolutely have to make the transfer. And as discussed earlier with Jian as well, like he was mentioning that because Saka can come sort of relatively close to Salah this week, and because Salah is not exactly going to be my captain, I can save the transfer, and with free transfers, I'll have plenty of flexibility to act next week. That's like the first idea that I have. The second one is to fund Salah, and for that I have 2 or 3 moves in my mind. I can sell Bruno to Minte and upgrade Saka to Salah, but I don't want to sell Bruno this week. I mean, I've stuck with him for so long. And this does not exactly seem like the week to sell him. I mean, Southampton are the way they play out from the back. I think it's a recipe for disaster. And they're actually top for big chances conceded, errors leading to goals conceded, etc. All these kind of stuff. I mean, this does not look like the week for that, but at least it's an option that is at the back of my mind. It would have been an easier transfer for me if, let's say, I didn't own João Pedro. So I could have done something similar to you, Fergie. I could have done Isak to João Pedro and Saka to Salah. But because I own João Pedro, I don't think there's anyone in the, let's say, 7 million, 6.5 million forwards price range that I wanted to get this week. I mean, Wissa has one, but Wissa's fixtures for the next 2 aren't great. And when you look at Calvert-Lewin, again, the fixture this week isn't amazing. So where do I go? I don't think I can justify downgrading Isak either, very much like Bruno. So another option is I can, and again, now this is contingent on Konsa being fit tomorrow. He got taken off in England's recent game. Let's say if Unai Emery comes up and says that he's fit tomorrow, and if he hear any positive update regarding him training, then maybe I can downgrade Porro to a 4 million defender and get Salah for Saka. That is something I can do. But that assumes that Konsa is fine. And that assumes that nothing else will come up over the next 2 weeks, because then I'm running with a threadbare bench. But my starting 11 is fine. I'll have Dunk, Konsa, and Trent for the next 2 weeks, which is a good enough defense. But it would assume that nothing else comes up because the bench is basically non-existent. So this is where I'm stuck. I'm currently torn more between the 4 million defender move and saving, as opposed to the Bruno out move and Isak move. But I would love to hear your thoughts and Jian's thoughts regarding this, because I'm very, very torn. I think this is the toughest sort of situation I've been in this season, and I'm not really sure which way to go. It seems like a swingy decision as well, because if Salah hauls with his ownership, yeah, it's going to hurt.
I think.
Yeah. So
you go, Jian.
You go first. You go first.
Please, you go.
Okay. I was gonna say I actually really like Man United assets for this week. I'm not gonna do it, but I was even thinking about Rashford earlier just because I like this fixture so much. So I think I would definitely hold Bruno. If I was you. I mean, you've got here now, right? Like, take the best fixture that you probably have on the calendar, and then you can assess afterwards. So yeah, similar to you, if you're going to do it, I would rather do the Porro move. I'd still lean towards keeping it. I think having that mass flexibility in Game Week 5 when people are almost locked into doing a certain thing will be really nice. And obviously the thing we spoke about in terms of the fact that you're not going to captain Salah, so the upside isn't immense.
I think the way you were talking about your team, it kind of depends on if you are going to wildcard in 6 or not, for example. So if
very likely, assume that I will.
I think if you were, I would be tempted to go Bruno to a Brighton mid, because the fixture's so good. If you weren't, you could potentially go Bruno to Mbeumo, for example, assuming that gives you enough to kind of do it as well. But I kind of disagree with both of you, what you said on. You've come so far with Bruno. I've come this far with Bruno. I would take that out. I would take it to try and take that objectively out of the equation, because would you pick Bruno this week if you were picking a wild card or a free hit or whatever else? And I think that may help you answer the question. I don't. It's easy for me to say because I don't have Bruno and I'm invested in other players, right? Kind of emotionally invested, but just because you come this far with him, does that mean you have to hold him? Would you pick him objectively this week? I don't know.
I would.
If you would,
I'd have double Man
United.
I
was gonna say.
And that's. I was gonna say
on a free hit, I think I would as well. I think on a free hit, I would as well. Probably not on a wild card, but on a free hit.
I think that probably answers your question. And I'm keeping Bruno. I think I don't think I would, but if you would, I keep him. And I play it out. I think I think that for me was the question on whether I would do it or not.
So you would save?
I think so, or kind of work another transfer. I don't really like the idea of taking out Porro. As you said, Bakar, like he's got the potential to haul every single game he plays, regardless of who it is. But again, if you are planning a wildcard in Game Week 6, you can get him back in Game Week 6. Because you're going to want him again, aren't you? Yeah. So you're taking out a player there you definitely want back.
The logic there is that I'm not going to be playing Porro this week anyway, and it's essentially just next week where, yes, he has Brentford at home, but it's a week where my defense is decent. I mean, Konsa is playing Wolves at home, Brighton are playing Nottingham Forest at home, Trent has a good fixture. So obviously losing him is not great, but it sort of allows me to get Salah this week. That's the trade-off, right?
I think for me,
Salah's 100% going to come into my team next week. It's just a matter of when, and how.
I think for me, it's how you feel emotionally as well. Like not owning Salah at the moment when he plays, it just hurts, right? It's just like everything he does, he looks so dangerous, and every time he gets a return, it's like a dagger to the heart as well. And I do, rightly or wrongly, kind of factor that into my decisions as well, the kind of ownership thing as well there of if he every time he scores, my rank just absolutely tumbles down. I'm sure it will with Saka and Isak. I'm not that bullish on Saka. I do think he's gonna, I think he's gonna get maybe like one return in the next 2 Saka, which I'm kind of happy with. I think Isak has the potential to do a bit more and kind of hurt me. But I also think that João Pedro, assuming he plays, which he should actually play with him being on penalties, Brighton kind of scoring for fun as well, can match Isak as well. So I think Isak and Pedro are going to sort of match each other, and I think that Salah will likely outscore Saka. But if you think Bruno is going to do the biz this week, definitely a hold for me for you, Bakar. Yeah, I think.
All right, thanks, guys.
Your recommended transfer on the AI was a straight transfer. You have enough money. Dunk straight to Robertson. That's it. I told you the AI loves Robertson.
It loves Robertson. I mean, honestly, if it was, let's say, if I didn't have Kwanzaa, I would have looked at a way of bringing him in, but I can't because with double Liverpool, I want Salah. I mean, bringing in Robertson would lock me out of Salah, so it's by default, it's something I'm not considering.
Yeah. Makes absolute sense. Jian, we've got your team on screen. Do you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, sure. So I have a few different routes. The one I'm really considering is selling Son and going to Eze. Now, that becomes an easier move to do if I know that Solanke's going to be back. Because if he is, and I know that Son's on the left wing, I like him far, far less than I do at 9. And I think having Eze for this fixture is really, really nice. I'm not as bullish on the fixture run that he has as other people are, but I still think with how well he's been performing, I should be okay with him. I watched the extended highlights of the games against West Ham and Brentford, and honestly, as a non-owner, I got so lucky. He should have easily had at least one return, but he should have definitely had a haul. I think that was probably the unluckiest someone's got so far. So I'll be bringing Eze in, I think. The other moves I can do is Lewis Hall up to Robertson. Similar to you, I really like the Robertson pick, especially when he comes in $1 million cheaper than Trent. Yeah. I love that Robertson pick. So those are the two moves I'm considering mainly.
Yeah, really good stuff.
So what's your guys' thoughts?
I think Eze is a lock. Like I say, I honestly think he's in my top 3 players I would have. Obviously based on price as well. 6.9 million. I'd get Eze, mate. He looks absolutely frightening, and he's got massive potential for double-digit hauls basically every week for the next month or whatever. So yeah, I'm all over Eze. I like the Robertson as well. If you haven't got Trent, I do like the Robertson pick. If you were wildcarding in 6, I would potentially say kind of a Gabriel over to Robertson or Trent. Robertson or Trent. But if you aren't, then obviously hold him. But yeah, looking good, Bakar.
Yeah, I mean the Eze transfer makes sense. I think you could potentially even consider a wildcard because let's say if you make a wildcard team, Jian, it would look completely different to the team you have, I assume.
So my thinking with that is that like my team's already set up well for wildcard 6. So like what most people will be doing, yeah. So I'm fine biting the bullet for the next 2, I think, and just fading it. Something on the wildcard though that I just thought about is I would actually really like a Trent Robert double up for the next 2. I think
I think that
could go.
Yeah, because no Liverpool over the next 2 weeks is something that could hurt, right? But as long as you're happy to accept the risk, it's fine. But this team would look fine in like 2 weeks' time. I sort of agree. If you sort of fix it with the free transfers, you'd be fine to roll. So I sort of get the idea. But I think if I had this team, I would look to wildcard because I don't think I would be able to live without Liverpool.
So one
for
thing,
2 weeks.
You know how I own cells? I'm really looking forward to the Liverpool Forest game because obviously everyone will have a flood of Liverpool and I'll just have the best person to like I guess counter that with cells. Yeah. So I'll be honest, I'm looking forward to that. So there's no way I'd do it.
You're a brave guy. You're much braver than I am.
And if you don't have Salah, mate, a penalty save there would be incredible.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. Honestly, I've been thinking about that.
Was that what you expected in terms of a critique, Jian? If I had your team, I would. Wow, that's the thing that Adam Hopcroft used to say to me every week. So, no, not alone. Your transfer recommendation this week: Smith Rowe straight to Eze. You can do that with the cash in the bank.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've got 1.5 in the bank.
Yeah, looking good, mate. Well, why would you take out Son ahead of Smith Rowe for Eze?
Because if I sell Smith Rowe, I won't have any money to go from Hall to Porro in game week.
Okay.
In game week 5.
Okay.
And I also like getting the cash out of Son because then I can get like the route to Mbeumo is a lot easier in 6.
Back-to-back home games for Son, though, mate.
I know. It's just that
you've held in this long.
Yeah, but I've got a 16-pointer out of him. So I think
you did.
Okay.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
Good stuff. My team's on screen. Happy at the moment, as I say. I've done my transfers. I took out Saka and Isak last night. I wasn't happy taking out Isak at all. I really do think he can have a really big couple of weeks, but it just enabled me to get to Salah, and João Pedro is a very reasonable replacement for Isak, so I'm happy with that. Henderson, Trent, Robinson, Porro, Jota, Salah, Eze, Haaland, João Pedro. I've still got Gordon, which kind of softens the blow a touch on Isak. Maybe I know everyone says you should look at players independently and that sort of stuff, but if Newcastle score, Gordon does tend to be involved, and so I had 3 free transfers. I'm also starting Rodgers as well. I've had Rodgers on the bench as well, so I'll be starting Rodgers ahead of Muniz. I was contemplating doing Gordon down to Mitoma. I really like Mitoma. I think his minutes for me are more assured than Minte, and using the 3 free transfers and really, really attacking these next 2 weeks with Mitoma, João Pedro. If I did that move, all of my players would be home for 2 weeks for Game Week 4 and Game Week 5. I'm just not sure the upside is there of having Mitoma or having Gordon still and a free transfer. So at the moment, I'm probably going to stick with Gordon. It does take away a bit of that Isak scare factor as well. So, but definitely wildcarding in Game Week 6, 100%. Really excited for it. I had a really good look this morning at the fixture swings, and I'm absolutely all over them. So yeah, I'm pretty tuned in. I've had a lot of luck this season with injuries. Haven't had to make a transfer, which has been obviously massive as well. And I did have Rodgers in place on the bench, which I'm pleased I've got him in now. Not had to make a transfer. So my recommended transfers were Robinson to Robertson, unsurprisingly, which was funded by Gordon to Semenyo, which are predicted to score very similarly over the next 4 weeks, but Robertson predicted to score a lot more than Robinson as well. So yeah, any critique on that at all, gents? Would you do anything differently in terms of the Salah and the Isak thing, or?
You can go first.
I think I would have done similar. I don't think I would have done anything differently because the team looks fine. Those were the obvious transfers to make. As mentioned earlier, I think the only sort of forward I would have sold Isak for is João Pedro. And because you're getting a captaincy option in Game Week 5 and you're getting a good pick for Game Week 4 as well. At the same time, I think over 2 weeks, it should pay off. Yeah. Yes, you're right. It is a bit of a dangerous transfer, but over 2 weeks, it should pay off. Even if it immediately backfires this week, I think you'll be fine over 2 weeks.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that, Bakar. Jian, anything before we
so I think it's a super marginal call. I expect Salah and João Pedro to outscore Isak and Saka over the next 2 weeks. Yeah. The only reason I'm not a huge fan of it is I just think it's putting a lot of your eggs into Game Week 4, 5, and then wildcard 6 basket, and not leaving too much for later down the line. Personally, I just prefer holding back a bit, just to see what develops, because I think Saka could do well as well. So I wouldn't do it, but I think it makes a lot of sense, and I really like Salah for Game Week 5. I think it's a brilliant fixture.
Good stuff. Thank you, guys. And that is it from
Fergie.
Oh yeah, please.
One last thing. Yeah, Rodgers on the bench. I play him over.
I've definitely played him over Muniz. I'm playing him over Muniz. I am.
Over Muniz.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I'd actually play both over Gordon. I think it's a close call between Muniz and Gordon, but I'd play Rodgers for sure.
Yeah, Muniz has been unlucky. He's had 11 shots in the box, I want to say.
I think Muniz has been good, like in terms of everything but finishing. I think he's looked good. I think it's super close. I don't think you can really get that one wrong in terms of the actual call.
I think I'm going to go for Gordon, and this is probably, I've just kind of said to you guys, look objectively at things, but the kind of Gordon thing when it comes to the scare factor of Isak, if Newcastle go to Wolves and beat them 3 or 4-1, which could happen, Isak will be heavily involved. I'd like to think that Gordon kind of would be too, and Muniz, even though
one thing,
Sorry, Jian, go on.
No, I was just going to say one thing is he might play right wing, if Barnes is to play left wing again, and he probably becomes a little bit worse there. So that's just something to consider.
Yeah, he's on free kicks and corners as well, though. So I think I'm pretty. I'll give it a think, or I may just cave. You know what I'm like. I may just have a Saturday morning, like a hit moment, and just move him on straight to Mitoma, and just bang Mitoma in for those back-to-back home fixtures. But I don't really want to use the third free transfer. That's the kind of move I would make in the past. And just a kind of in the moment thing rather than really think that extra transfer next week. And if I wildcard in 6, going in wildcarding with 2 or 3 free transfers is mega powerful. So I'm trying to hold back. But on the same note, I'm very excited for Mitoma for the next 2, and I'd love to get him in and do it. But that does feel a bit all, kind of all eggs in one basket. We'll see how I feel on Saturday morning, how my coffee tastes, how my sausages taste. If I'm in a good mood, if I'm in an angry mood, we'll see. Hope the kids don't piss me off, because then I tend to make a move to try and make me feel better. But yeah. That is it from us for this week. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us in the chat. Brilliant turnout as usual. Thank you so much. It's great to have you with us. Those are going to watch it back and those listening on the podcast version, your support is very, very much appreciated. Bakar, superb as usual. Thank you so much. Where can people get hold of you?
Thank you. My pleasure. At BigMan Bakar, BigManBakar on X and on Instagram.
Make sure you give Bakar a follow for some excellent content. And Jian, absolutely fantastic as usual, mate. Thank you so much. Where can people get hold of you?
Likewise, absolute pleasure. People can get hold of me at FPL Jian Batra on YouTube now and also X.
Make sure you give both these guys a follow. Their content, both of them, is absolutely top draw. My handle on Twitter is at FFH Fergie, and this podcast and video will be in the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel with a podcast version available on all major podcast platforms. If you like what you watch, if you haven't yet, please press the like button. We'd really appreciate it. Remember to subscribe in the channel in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast version. Give us 5 stars and leave a comment. We really appreciate it. We'll be back next week. Rich is back to preview Game Week 5. Just a word on Rich's moves. He texted me the other day. He's also got 3 free transfers, and he's doing the same thing as me. Salah and João Pedro for Isak and Saka, but he was contemplating taking out Nkunku. I think he could afford Nkunku, his midfielder, moving to Mbeumo, because Rich, like you guys, is much more forward thinking than I am. And he has the potential to want to save his wild card in Game Week 6. So they were Rich's moves. But he'll be back next week. He's on holiday this week in the sun. In the meantime, we hope you have a fantastic Game Week 4. And may all your arrows be green. Good night all.